Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Talking Mods with Ron, me. And today we're going to talk about a very controversial subject. Is an intake worth it? So let's jump into it. Is it actually worth it? I know that across the board, on the forums, on a lot of the message groups, on Facebook, everyone's always, no, they're not worth it, or, oh, it's BS, and a lot of stuff. So let's cover all these topics. Let's talk about horsepower. Let's talk about all these different things about it, and let's come to a conclusion. Is it worth it? Here at our company, do I think it's worth it? I'll give you my conclusion at the end, but at Mod Bargains we do sell a lot of different brands. I am not going to cover the brands. I'm not partial to one brand over another. So I'm not going to be going into this brand produces this much horsepower and this one. We're not going to be doing that.
No! No!
We're just going to be talking about an intake's functionality, and we'll go from there. What is an intake? Thinking about it like a human body, and it's about how we breathe, right? If I had you breathe, if I had you go running and I had you go breathe in and out with a straw and I had you go run, obviously your performance is going to go away. And if I took away that straw and then I said go run that mile again, your performance is going to increase. Why? Because you got more air.
Run.
And obviously more air equals more combustion. The exhaling would be your exhaust, but we're not talking about exhaust today. We're doing intakes only. Why did the manufacturers make it that way? Well, there's some restrictions. They want to keep it clean. But there's other better performances out there from many different companies like Injen, K&N, AFE, so forth and so forth. By increasing it, what are some of the benefits of buying an intake? Obviously, well, one is there's the obvious look of it. It looks good once you open up the engine, and you have the sound, right? When you do have an intake, there is a noticeable sound. I know the OEM original equipment manufacturer, right? The manufacturers, they don't want that sometimes, but for us as enthusiasts, we like it. When we hear it, we can hear that like kind of whoosh of the sound being grabbed. And the big one is horsepower. Now I'll jump into the horsepower debate right away. Is it noticeable?
No, no, no.
That's straight off the bat. You're not going to be able to notice an 8 horsepower or a 6 horsepower at the seat of your pants unless that motor is getting that much more performance out of it, but most of the time you're not going to feel it. Big misconception by a lot of people. So you're not going to feel that horsepower. If you want to feel horsepower, you need to get a supercharger or a turbocharger, right? Something else that's going to create a lot more power. Where there's a lot of claims out there, they're making 15. Obviously, you would have to look at a dyno graph and you can tell that it's going to be only at a certain point. When you look at the dyno, though, is it making consistent numbers above the standard? Let's say this is the standard. Is it making above it? And maybe we can put some graphic up and we can show it. Is it doing above? And then what they're measuring is that peak horsepower, that one specific RPM, whether it's at 5,500 RPM, which your car doesn't run in, or at 8,000 RPM, which you're never almost in. So again, it just depends on where on the range it's at. So that's the horsepower. And the other major benefit is the increase of miles per gallon. Now, the average mile per gallon increase for an intake is about 2 miles per gallon. You can say a filter, you can just say, some debate goes into, hey, just do a filter, a better quality filter, and that typically sees about a 1 mile per gallon. Now, every vehicle is different. The average vehicle, we're talking about Camrys to Honda Accords and so forth, comes in at 25.1 miles per gallon. The average person drives 15,000 miles. Figure this out. Okay, so how many gallons is that? Well, that's 597 gallons. I'm looking down because I already did the math here. That's 597 gallons, right? For that, let's say, Honda. So we're looking at, if we take the price of the average gas price across the U.S., it was $2.30. Some people are probably scoffing. Here in California, it's a lot more. It's $3.50 was the average. So you're looking at $109 for the year, just in that regard. Now, you're saving $109.
You need to understand the importance of saving money. But Grandma said I could use this money to buy whatever I want.
What's your break-even point? Well, the average intake for most Hondas are going to be about 200. One more thing that we're forgetting is these filters are universal lifetime filters. Yes, they need to be cleaned out and oiled and so forth, but the Honda filter is going to be, about $20. So we're really looking at about $130. Break-even point, 2 years. Now let's do more of a high-end car. An enthusiast car, let's say the M4. Now the M4 in general gets about 17.4 miles per gallon. Real driving, not the EPA's writing. So we're increasing it. We're going to 19.4 miles per gallon with the two additional with getting the intake. So again, 15,000 miles, a difference of about 89 gallons difference. That's $311.15. Now, how much is the OEM filter? Because we got to change. Now, how often are OEM filters changed? Every manufacturer is going to give you a different range. Well, they go between 15,000 to 30,000. So again, we're doing 15,000. Let's just go with that bottom number. And the OEM filter on the M4 is $25 a piece. There's 2 pieces, so that's $50. We're talking about $361.
Not too bad.
In the savings. Well, the cost is exactly the price of an intake. So is an intake worth it? If you're going to have the car for longer than a year, you've just paid for itself back. And you've gotten more increase in horsepower. You've gotten an increase all across the board. And you have that lifetime, with your filter. So is it worth it? My conclusion is yes, of course it is. Well, what about in certain conditions? Isn't the OEM better? Again, there is dry filters, there's OEM filters. The dry filter will catch more than the oiled one, but again, you can re-oil, you can recharge. Obviously, if you live in conditions like New Mexico or Arizona and so forth, in the desert, you need to be changing out your filter and cleaning it out more often. But in certain conditions, you don't. They last longer. But regardless, there's still a very big difference on that extra miles per gallon makes a huge difference. Is it worth it? Heck yeah. Are you getting more horsepower? Yeah, you're going to get more horsepower despite what this whole debate is. And on that debate, there's a lot to it. And there's more reason on why the horsepower sometimes doesn't show on early dyno numbers when you put it before and after right away. Well, a lot of our cars have self-learning computers. So the cars have to learn for the intake being in there. One of the best ways, at least in the old days, is the way I would do it. I would disconnect my battery off your car. Again, every car is different, guys. So you might, you can trip up some, the radio code and some other stuff on your car. But in the old days, I would disconnect it that night. I'd wake up extra early and I plug the battery back in, and then I go for an early morning drive, and the car would basically start to relearn for that new horsepower. And you could feel it. You can kind of feel that it's not compensating, but it's readjusting for the additional flow. Again, so right there and then, I've seen it. I've seen it on the dyno when it goes into, you got to get about 200 to 300 miles when the computer starts to learn about it. So that kind of maybe debunks some of that myth where the horsepower doesn't add up. There's a lot of engineering with these companies that are doing it. They are seeing the horsepower numbers. They're not lying about it. But again, there's independent testing. There's plenty of independent testing that happens. In the future, hopefully we can show you some of that stuff. Hopefully that answers some of the questions about intakes. Again, I'd like to hear what you guys think. Feel free to give your personal experiences. You guys can talk about your brands. Put it into the comments. If you like this video, please hit a thumb up. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. It helps us out. And again, we appreciate you guys. Thanks again. We'll talk on the next Talking Mods.